Welcome, everyone, to the Plaistow Planning Board of January 15th, 2020. Sam, roll call, please.
Tim Moore,
Here.
Jim Peck,
Here.
Lori Millette,
Here.
Greg Talon,
Here.
Jeff Adams,
Here.
and also in attendance, we have John Cashel, Planning Director.
Okay. I think everybody knows Greg, but for those of you that do not, Greg is the new Planning Board ex officio alternate member, replacing Steve Renlet, who resigned from the Board of Selectmen just recently. So welcome, Greg.
Thank you.
So we have two public hearings that were continued from December 5th. D, as you can see in your, well, let's do minutes first. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So next item on the agenda is review approval of the December 18th minutes. Is there a?
I move we approve the minutes of December 18th.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded, and I forgot to, for the minutes, appoint Jeff as a voting member. So, any discussion on the minutes? Not, call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining?
Abstain.
All right, so Lori and Greg.
You appoint Jeff.
I did.
Yeah, he just did.
So that's 302.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have two public hearings that were continued, or not public hearings, actually, looking at the completeness from December 5th. As you can see from the staff report, D still did not have all the information to complete the checklist. So I think we're really at the point where we need to continue these again because we have no information on what to base an opinion on whether the plan is complete. So that's kind of where we are. If you want to request those be continued, we can do that.
I guess Jim, I have no choice, do I?
The other choice is pretty ugly. We would, okay, and that continued date will be February 19th, which is our third Wednesday in February.
That'll work out, we'll be able to have a second Keach review.
You gotta get the checklist in.
Checklist, I emailed again today, I just noticed it today that it didn't go through, it bounced back. I had emailed it like 3 weeks ago, didn't come through, so I expected this when I got here tonight, because it was in my spam that it didn't, that it bounced back or whatever, so.
Okay, so those would be continued, and hopefully we'll be able to wrap everything up on the.
Should be, the other problem we had is the state's website's been down for almost a week, so we think we have subdivision approval, but things aren't coming through, some emails are, some aren't. It's very confusing, everything is supposed to be electronic with them, and we haven't been able to submit or send them anything since last Friday, so.
Yeah. Takes,
So by the, I'm sure that'll be all taken care of by the 19th. so.
State
yes.
software has been off.
Since Friday morning.
Yeah, I think it.
And when you call them, their answer is, I don't know.
Ouch.
Probably trained to say that. So.
Well, fair answer. They're probably, you know,
Yeah.
could be a week, it could be 10 minutes, who knows?
Yeah.
But then basically we'll have all the items.
Yeah. Yeah, that will be good.
All right,
All right, we will see you
19th.
February 19th.
Thank you for your time.
Double check, but I'm sure that's the third Wednesday in February. Yes. So that would be February 19th at 6:30.
Thank you.
All right, and so the next item on the agenda then is public hearing on the master plan. So, Steve, I'll turn the floor over to you.
How do you want to do this?
I'm not quite sure, however you think it might go best.
Okay. It looks like you posted the existing draft of the master plan back in December. There was an announcement with the official public hearing announcement for tonight. I don't believe any comments have come through D, because the only comments I've received are from Jim and John. Any new comments were from Jim and John.
Yeah.
We've gone through it as well, and found just some additional little punctuation and those little things you chase till the end. And so we have a list of those to make those changes. Some of them were ones you also caught. At this point, there are a couple of minor updates within the community facilities section. We have to resolve the fact that no crash data was available. So we have to put some text in, just recognizing that there are places so that as future transportation engineering happens within the community, they are collecting that data, which they would anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not a major holdup for this. And then the majority of the implementation actions were completed. There were a couple that were not filled in, and I can tell you what I think they should be.
Sure.
And a couple of them were ongoing types of things. But that's about it. And so at this point, you have now been working on this for, let's say, year and a half or so.
Pretty close to that, I guess.
Yeah. You can choose tonight to adopt it, knowing that these minor changes are going to happen, and then a new copy will be given to you. Or you can wait, continue this public hearing, and revisit it one more time, and we can provide you with an updated change in between. It's really up to you.
There is one more. I was going to give you a change on the Historical Society.
Right.
But I can get that to you. It's not major.
Okay, because I do have the one you gave me for the
I
library.
gave you the library, but I didn't give you the historical.
Right. So you still want to do that, Jim?
Pardon me?
You can still do that?
Yeah, it's been on my to-do list. I just have to get it done.
Okay. So I don't know what your preference is on that.
I would say we would adopt it, condition on getting those updates made.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we can make those changes. And then, I mean, the master plan is a living document. If you get down the road and you want to make additional changes, you have the ability to do so. It was relatively easy to post a public hearing.
Yeah.
We're not overwhelmed with people who are interested in reading your work, or they just loved it so much. So we can move through these changes, and if I don't hear from Jim, I'll reach out.
Yeah.
If we're just,
Yeah.
and we can get a new version to you. Anything else that you need beyond just a final version of this delivered?
The only thing, we were going to, in the implementation section, have kind of an annual update form.
Yes. Yeah,
And-
you talked about creating a separate sheet in the
Yes.
appendix that you
Yeah.
could track?
Right.
Yes.
So I don't remember seeing that. It may.
Do you want it included as an appendix item?
It doesn't matter to me if it's an appendix or just another.
Separate.
Thing in the implementation. Maybe an appendix would be a little neater.
Yeah, and then you could just swap those PDF pages if you update it.
Yes.
So then you'd have a place where people would look in one location.
Right, yeah.
Okay. So with the tracking column,
We got one of
Yeah.
I've got maybe a dumb question. Is there a history section in the master plan?
there is, but
History
we,
of the town?
There is, but we also there was a tremendous amount of depth in the last master plan. So we took a section of that and we wanted to include it in the appendix. So when you look in the table of contents, it says historical inventory items. We had text and then there were historical inventory. And the planning board decided the text was a bit much, but the inventory items should be carried forward. But
So
it's
the-
pages and pages.
So the extent of that history is much smaller than it used to be?
Correct. And it references, I believe, it references the original document.
So it references the original document, because the original document was quite extensive.
Right.
I
It
just
was
didn't
extremely
focus on
extensive.
it before.
Yeah, we reduced it greatly in here. And we included a little history up front in the introduction section, and then elsewhere in here. But it was the inventory in the appendix. That was the decision a year or so ago.
Yeah, I didn't focus on that before. I'll have to take a quick look at that.
The documents are still in existence. How much they drive the land use implementation actions at this point, they inform it to some degree, but
I was just thinking we might want to append it to the master plan, so it's all in one place, it's still, so you wouldn't have to go back to the original document.
right.
Yep,
I should have thought of that before, my apologies for that,
yep.
but it was quite well done and quite extensive.
It is, but it's almost like a book. Yeah.
The only problem I have, it's all information that's come out of the 200 or 250th anniversary. I mean, it's all stuff that was in some other document. Not that it couldn't be in the master plan.
Yeah,
But it was a little duplicative.
I don't think it necessarily has to be in the master plan, but it's a good reference, so I don't know if it was appended to the old master plan, will we still be able to go out and reference it? When you Google history of Plaistow, that's one of the first hits,
The master plan?
master plan history.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people use it. I do, obviously, but I was just trying to think through the best way to handle it.
Yeah.
I agree with you, it doesn't necessarily have to be appended to the new master plan, but it has to be referenced somehow.
Yeah.
Is it still gonna be part of the old master plan? Is that gonna be out there for people to look at?
You can see the old master plan now, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be there.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't see any reason to take that down
Yeah.
necessarily.
So there you
So
go.
if the
I
history's
guess I'm
there-
happy with that,
Okay.
as long as it's still out there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, all this effort that's been put into it, for the viewing public, and it did come out in the department head meeting today. I really found it to be a good read.
Oh, I'm glad.
If anybody's out there and wants to learn as much as they can in quick order about the community itself.
Right.
This is really going to be the document to read. You have all your natural resources, your economic development, your population. It just, every ingredient that makes up the community is touched in here. And then it really, a lot of master plan updates and master plans, they end up on the shelf somewhere, collecting dust, as they say, and, few people will read them. But this has such a strong implementation section to it, so there's going to be a lot of stewardship involved with this to make sure that year in and year out going forward, that the town is maintaining its resources, improving on the resources. So it's going to be a great reference document relative to continuing bettering the community as we go on, year after year. And a lot of the information is really up to date.
Yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
that was the purpose of kind of having this annual
Yeah.
sheet. And this time of year, on an annual basis, we'd look and see what are the ongoing items that we need to look at, and what are what new actions need to be undertaken, and we'd check those off. So we'd compile a history,
The last one I was involved in, it took 6 years. So it's
Oh,
almost
boy.
ready to do another one.
Wow,
I know, you thought this was long.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree, it's a great document. It's really a shame that more people don't read it. I mean, even town officers, you should encourage the other selectmen to to, get a copy and look through it. I mean, they contributed, I think, of parts of it, so, but
Right.
there's still some very good information for anybody in the town.
Yeah, it's a good, totally good reference document.
Yeah, it's
If
a
you
good
wanna
reference
learn
document.
about the town you live in, this is the document, and it's an afternoon read.
Yeah, it's only 60 pages.
Yeah.
Right, in reality.
Yep.
So what I thought I would do, once we get the final version back, I would try to get on the selectmen's agenda and present that to them.
Perfect.
Because it is, we spent, a lot of time on this. A lot of time over the last 4 or 5 years, updating a chapter here and a chapter there. Struggled a little bit, had a few false starts, but now I was just really happy.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah, real good.
In fact,
Yeah, it is very good.
so happy that in March, the Rockingham Planning Commission's monthly meeting will be in Plaistow, and they typically give, as it rotates around from town to town, they give each town a few minutes to say what's going on, and so I'm going to tell them we've
Toot your
done
own
this
horn.
master plan.
That's good.
I talked to Ben Frost maybe at the kneecap meeting, and I mentioned to him about the stewardship, and he was very interested, so I
I
want to make
bet.
sure we give him a copy
Right.
when we're all done, so he was very interested in the
Now that's
form and
exciting.
format of it, so.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Make sure you vote on it tonight. And then we'll move through these changes and get a final version to you,
Yeah,
with the items in the appendix as well.
so, just, there is no one in the audience, so does anyone on the board have any other further comments or questions on the master plan?
You want to motion to accept
Motion to adopt as, with the changes
with the
that we've,
changes? I move we adopt the new master plan with the changes.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's made and second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Excellent.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It was really,
Congratulations to you.
It's been a pleasure. No, it really has been a pleasure. It's been a fun document to work on, and the fact that you wanted to do it in a more innovative way made it a lot more fun. So we look forward to delivering the final version.
And you know a lot more about Plaistow.
I do. I have a real appreciation.
Yeah.
That's the thing with doing these projects. You come to a town and you wonder, like, what is going on in this town?
Yeah.
And then you get to understand it. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. All right. Don't see anything else under old business. Under, well, I guess this could be, well, I don't know, it doesn't matter. So under new business, Dee was kind enough to come back and print out the voters' notes. So you'll see the zoning amendments that we've already discussed and posted for the warrant. But the voter's guide is a separate document that has the warrant articles and a brief explanation about what the change is. And so the D went through the warrants and added these voters' note to each warrant. So, like to go through they're all pretty short. Like to go through them now, and if we have any changes, make the changes.
Just to be clear, these don't go in the warrant, they go in the voter's guide.
That's absolutely correct. Yep, they do not go on the warrant, just the voter's guide. And the selectmen doing likewise with the other, with their warrants that they're responsible for, and they're getting ready. And Greg coincidentally has worked on that. So they're getting ready to get that published. So that was kind of critical that we get this finished up tonight, so we can attach our voters' notes to the ones that the selectmen are preparing. So I think we just quickly go through these one at a time. For Z20-1, which is defining retail business. Note says this is a housekeeping item, which it has already assumed that the rental is a retail function. This change will leave nothing open for interpretation. Is that note satisfactory? Anyone want to
Sounds good to
change?
me.
Yep.
Yes, okay. So the next one, Z20-2, the note reads, to provide a clear definition of a trade business, parentheses, electrician, plumber, et cetera, that typically does not require exterior storage, and distinguish it from a contractor business, landscaping, construction, which is more intense use, commonly known to require exterior storage.
That looks good.
Okay, any other comments on that? The next one, Z23, is a change in the definition of change of use. And the note says to create a clearer, more user-friendly definition of change of use and define it when it is appropriate for the planning board to review any proposed changes in a commercial/industrial use.
Looks good.
Is everyone happy with
Yeah.
that? Z20-4, location of residential driveways. The note says to allow property owner of a new lot that is created by subdivision having frontage on more than one roadway to choose their driveway access point when there is more than one viable location. All other requirements for the placement of a new driveway, that is setbacks, are applicable. Currently, the driveway can only be located in the frontage area that allows the lot to be subdivided by meeting a minimum frontage requirements, even if another access point would make more sense from a traffic safety or wetlands crossing standpoint. The property owner would be required to apply to the Zoning Board of Adjustment for variance relief to use any other frontage area for their driveway. This adds unnecessary expense and delay to an otherwise routine and compliant subdivision project. Any comments?
There's more on the next page.
Pardon?
There's more.
Oh, I'm not, oh, sorry, thank
Next
you.
page.
The planning board would still review the location of the proposed driveway as part of the subdivision review and approval process to ensure that all other criteria meet the regulation and ordinance requirements.
That's good.
It's good. It's long. It's long, and usually if you have a long, it makes it more difficult, but I guess it's okay, because it's
Yeah,
explaining. It's almost longer than the warrant, though.
yeah, well. Sometimes
Yeah.
it takes a
To
little
explain, yeah.
longer to explain things. So the next one was on public roads, and the note reads, housekeeping, to relocate the requirement for a PRD roadway to be public from the PRD section to the general requirements section to have all public roadway criteria in a single location within the ordinances. Doing so lessens the chance that it will be overlooked. Everyone happy with?
I guess it's okay. It says PRD, and I guess if you read the warrant, you know what PRD is, but if you just read the explanation, you wouldn't, but
Oh.
I guess it's fine.
But the voter's guide would have both the warrant and the note,
I know.
so.
I think it's fine.
Yeah.
The next one, Z20-6, is deleting motels from permitted use. Note really just reiterates that same language. To remove motel as a permitted use in any zoning district in town. Anyone who would seek to have a motel would still have the option to apply to the Zoning Board of Adjustment for a variance if they can meet that criteria.
Looks good.
To the point.
Okay, Z20-7. Again, this is going back to the trade use. And the note says Article Z 20-2 defines what is meant by a trade business. This proposed amendment defines where such a business can operate. If passed, trade businesses as defined in Article 2 would only be allowed in the Commercial 1, Industrial, and ICR districts. For the location of these districts, please refer to the zoning map found on the town's website. These businesses would still be allowed in other zoning districts on a small scale as a home occupation, provided the criteria in Article 10, which is home occupation, can be met.
Yep, that's good.
Is everyone all
Yeah.
set with that? Okay. Article Z 20-8, personal services business. The note reads, to allow personal services business, which are those licensed businesses such as hair/nail salons, cosmetologists, estheticians, barbers, massage slash physical therapists, and the like, as a permitted use in the Commercial 2 and Village Center districts. For the location of these districts, please refer to the zoning map found on the town's website, www.plaistow.com. Any
Yep.
problems with that? Okay, the next one, Z 20-9. The note, it should tell us what it is. Well, this is the corrals and barns and so forth. And so the note reads, the current ordinance requires that any structures that houses farm animals to be 100 feet from all property lines.
Should that be that and not the? It says structure the houses, that houses,
Structure,
word before
Oh,
houses.
yes, it should be that. yep. Good catch. That houses farm animals to be 100 feet from all property lines. This means that anyone who might want to have a farm animal, parentheses including but not limited to goats, sheep, cows, and horses, have property that is at least 200 feet plus the dimensions of the structure wide in all directions. There is an associated ordinance in each district that requires the corral for these animals to be at least 50 feet from all property lines. This proposed amendment does not affect that requirement. Since the corral/fencing defines how close any farm animals might get to an abutting property, the location of the housing structure is irrelevant to the activities of the farm animal, provided that both the structure and animal are within the corral. Setback restriction is maintained at 100 feet if there is no corral to encourage property owners to have a corral.
Looks good.
Okay, so pass that, the one change from
Yeah.
D to that onto
Yep.
to D, so that will be updated.
You're having an impact there, Greg.
I think Craig's had a lot of practice with voters' guides over the last couple of weeks. He's attuned to catching those. So the next one made changes to the PRD. I won't read through all of the changes, but the voter's note says there are multiple changes proposed to the should be planned, not planning, residential development, PRD ordinance. Some of these are housekeeping in nature, such as changing the term dwellings to dwelling units. A duplex could be seen as a single dwelling, but it has two dwelling units. By using the term dwelling units, it makes clear how the total number of allowed units is calculated for density purposes. The overall intent of the PRD ordinance has always been to provide a property owner the ability to develop a residentially zoned parcel to allow the maximum density while requiring the preservation and protection of open space. The other changes that are proposed with this amendment are to encourage a PRD type of development over a standard subdivision layout. Most standard subdivision layouts result in more roadway, and there's no requirement to preserve open space. By reducing some of the PRD requirements, such as 10-acre parcel size minimum and the 200 feet of frontage requirement, it is hoped that developers will choose to go with the PRD form of development. Nothing in the proposed changes would allow for a greater density in the PRD than what would be allowed in a standard subdivision. There are also changes to help better define the open space requirements, locations of buffers, and better defines how close structures can be to those buffers. Yet another change links the community well radius to the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services standards instead of an arbitrary one-size-fits-all number. The full context of the current, should read planned residential development ordinance, Article 6, is available on the town's website, www.plaistow.com.
Looks good.
So, mouthful there, but, we've changed the planning to planned in those two locations. The next one, Z20-11, again, quite a lengthy list of changes there, which I won't read tonight. The voters note says this current affordable elderly housing district ordinance was approved by the voters in 2018. As developers have met with town staff to discuss possibilities of developing such a project, it was noted that there were some minor areas were too open to interpretation. There were also changes in some federal government program terminology that was inconsistent with this ordinance. For example, the term elderly has been replaced by older person. The changes proposed to this amendment are to better define the requirements of the ordinance and relate the ordinance to more federal programs that would financially support such a development, so that when their requirements change, our ordinance would automatically change and never be in conflict. The full text of the current Affordable Elderly Housing District Ordinance, Article 7, is available on the town's website, www.plaistow.com.
Looks good.
Okay. The next one, Z20-12, for permitted uses. The note reads, to make the number of children allowed in an in-home daycare or an in-home teaching situation be the same number, parentheses 6. This proposed amendment was suggested by the Zoning Board of Adjustment, who have jurisdiction over granting of a special exception for home occupations. ZBA did not take a position on whether both should be capped at 4 or at 6, but expressed that these permitted uses are similar in character, and there didn't seem to be a reason why they should be different in number. And we agreed and are proposed to change them both to 6.
Looks good.
Okay. The next one, Z20-13, another housekeeping item. The note reads, housekeeping, with the recent update to the school district and recreational facility impact fee methodology, as well as recent New Hampshire legislative changes in the allowance for accessory dwelling units, these changes are necessary to make everything agree in terminology and how assessing accessories or dwelling units are assessed for impact fees.
That's fine.
Okay? Any
Yep.
The next one, Z2014, regarding the Board of Adjustment and expiration of variance. The note reads, it is said the variances and special exceptions go with the land in perpetuity. That means a property owner could have received a variance in 1960, never implemented the purpose of the variance, but would still be able to rely on the variance no matter how many other associated zoning changes may have occurred, or how many times the property or any impacted abutting property may have changed hands in the interim. In 2013, the state passed legislation that put a 2-year expiration date on any variance or special exception that was approved but not exercised, parentheses implemented, from the effective date of the legislative change. The state left it to each municipality to decide whether or not there would be an expiration date for variances and special exceptions approved prior to the legislative change. This proposed amendment will place the same 2-year expiration on any previously approved variance or special exception that was granted prior to the 2013 legislative change, but not exercised by March 30th, 2022. The proposed change will not prohibit any property owner whose variance or special exception expires from reapplying for variance after March 30th, 2022. Any,
Good.
everyone set with that?
Yep.
And the last one, Z20-15. This was the change in properties at the end of Main Street. I rezoned them to C2. The voter note reads, to rezone the designated 4 parcels located at the south end of Main Street from a Commercial 1 designation to a Commercial 2 designation. To see what C1 and C2 district requirements are, please refer to Article 5 of the Plaistow zoning ordinances on the town's website.
Looks good.
Is the explanation of Commercial 1 and Commercial 2 brief, or is it very long?
It's fairly brief, I think.
A very, very common thing I hear from voters. They have no idea what these codes
And I
mean.
can tend to agree with that, too.
And if you could, if it's a very brief definition, if you could
C2
put what
is more-
C1 and
No,
C2
but he's
was.
saying-
It's more restrictive than C1.
Yeah, he understands that, but he's saying, put it in the explanation.
Explanation.
Okay,
Just lift the definition, just drop it in here.
yeah, yeah.
It can't be that long, is it?
If it is tortuously long, I'm sure we can make it
Yeah.
more concise.
Synopsize it or something.
That'd be good.
A couple of 3 sentences or something.
What this note is saying is,
You understand the
really
difference?
interested, go to
If you're really, really interested.
go to Article 5, Plaistow zoning.
But, yeah, I agree. It would, I mean, the purpose was to help people understand what the change is. So
Yeah.
if they don't understand what C1 and C2 is, then, yeah, so.
Do you understand the difference?
No.
Oh, okay. C2 is more like, I mean, more restrictive. You can't do a lot of commercial things. C2 is basically
Different
Main
type of
Street. Main
commercial.
Street is C2.
So it'd be things that you don't want to have.
125 is
Right,
C1.
C1, okay.
Right.
So a home business or a small shop.
Can't do a lot of retail businesses on a C2. Or
Keep
it's
with the
much more.
characteristic of
Yep.
Main
We're
Street.
trying to, stop the commercial coming into Main Street.
Yeah. And, when I've talked to a lot of voters, they'll say, what does that mean? Did they gonna make it
Yeah.
more commercial? And, they see C1 and
Right.
C2 and assume that C1 is the lesser and C2 is more commercial.
Well, this actually was changed to C1 back
yeah,
in
actually.
2016,
18.
17?
So C1 is the 125.
2018.
C2 is Main Street, essentially.
The other thing is, just to discuss it, those are really small lots that are much more conducive for, a lower impacting use than
Right, than a big firm coming in.
which is more conducive to that village zoning district that you're going into, transitioning to.
All right. So do we have a motion to limit these changes to the voters' notes?
I move we accept the voters' notes that
Yeah. it's-
to be placed in the voters' guide.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? All right.
It should have said with the
With
proposed
this, yeah,
adjustments.
Understood, yeah. All right, so the last item is legislation. As I'm sure everybody recalls, early in the spring, we came across somewhat of an anomaly where there was no definition in the RSAs as to when no way to let the public know when a zoning determination was made. Hence, you didn't know what the appeal period was, and hence, you might easily to lose the opportunity to appeal a zoning determination made by the zoning officer. So sometime, I think in September was the deadline for submitting legislative change requests, as they're referred to, LSRs, to the legislation. So I sent our House representatives, Norm Major, Bob Harb, Deb DeSimone, Pete Terosian, and those are all the District 14 Plaistow-Atkinson reps, and also Mark Pearson, who is the District 34 rep, which is that floating district, as they call it, but part of his territory district is Plaistow. So I sent all 5 of them an email stating what the problem was and asking them to support a bill that would clarify that. So they did, and I got a call Sunday night from Norm Major saying that the bill language was ready and that it was going to have a public hearing this morning. So I attached the bill, HB 1439, and you can see the bolded text is the proposed text to add to the existing RSA, and the struck out text is text to be deleted. So we had that hearing this morning, and also attached is the testimony that I presented to the Municipal and County Government Committee. I think the hearing went pretty well. New Hampshire Municipal Association had a couple of comments and was recommending an amendment, and they had 2 things. Well, I don't know. I'll say 3 things. There are apparently some towns, smaller towns, that do not have a zoning official. So if that's the case, then the planning board itself makes the zoning determination. I was not aware of that. So that little kind of detail, I mean, if you're going to change the ordinance, you're going to change it right. So that was a helpful comment. And they were also concerned that the text that got struck out, if the notice of public hearing has been included, blah, blah, blah. They were afraid that somehow that would impact the ability to continue a hearing without having to continuously renotice. I don't think that's the case, but we'll deal with that. And then the last change set a concrete 30 days as the appeal period. And as probably, and I was aware of the same thing, each zoning board can set their own appeal period. So right now, Plaistow Zoning Board has set that to 20 days rather than 30. Although I think Dee said they're seriously considering making that 30. 30 days pops up all over the place throughout the legislation for appeal periods and et cetera, et cetera. So NHMA's opinion was that this ordinance or proposed change should not hard code, if you will, 30 days in there. So language would be changed to, instead of 30 days, whatever the local zoning board of adjustment period, appeal period is. So it would be, not cause anyone any hardship. So the person that, from NHMA, was Margaret Burns, who is the executive director, actually, of NHMA. I think I've met her only once or twice. But we agreed we would get together and work out an amended language. And then the committee would then vote on the bill as amended, with language that we can come up with. And I think they were planning to take their vote on whether to kill the bill or approve it and pass it on to the full House next Wednesday. So we need to meet fairly quickly to do that. And I'm sure we will. We've worked with NHMA on other legislation. So from that point of view, I think we'll get a change. In effect, if NHMA approves the amended change, it's highly likely that the committee will also vote to, the status would be ought to pass as amended. Then it goes to the full House for a vote. And if the full House votes, then the status is passed/adopted with amendment. And then at some point, it goes to the Senate. It gets assigned to a Senate committee, and then the Senate committee has a hearing on the bill or amended bill that gets sent over from the House. They have the option to introduce further amendments or not, but I'm not as familiar with the names of the Senate committees. It's not municipal accounting, but whichever committee it is, they vote on it, and then it goes to the full Senate. If the full Senate approves it as amended from the House, then it goes to the governor. The other option is if the Senate adds a further amendment, then it either goes back to the House to vote on whether they accept the amendment, or it goes to conference of committee where they have representatives from both the House and Senate, I agree. And those are the very simple process. In between, there's all kinds of rules for doing this, that, and the other thing. But anyway, I was pretty pleased.
I'm reading through this House bill, and it refers to an existing RSA, and this is the amendment to the RSA. So
Yeah.
could you just walk through, Mike or whoever a zoning officer makes a zoning determination on a date?
Yeah.
What happens after that?
Okay, so the first change would be, right now, the legal notice that gets sent out has the date that we will discuss whether to accept the plan as complete. The wording that they used in the current RSA, which I'm not sure when that changed, but they used the term formally submitted to the board, and then the date of the public hearing. So the proposal is to add a third date. The final zoning determination really should be announcement in there, because that's not the date that you do the final determination. But you announce the date, so everybody knows the date's coming up, when that will be done. And then starting from that point on is the ZBA appeal period. So they have,
I'm still a little confused here. Forget about the public hearing. Mike makes a zoning determination on a property that it's zoned properly,
Yeah.
or whatever. Then he fills out a form.
yeah,
We saw the form. He puts a date on it.
yeah.
Is that when the clock starts? Or does it start from the point that it goes to us? I thought it was when he made the zoning determination.
Well, it is right now.
Okay.
And so the difficulty with that is you don't know exactly when he did it, so you don't know when the appeal period is over.
Right.
So what the proposed change in hopes to do is, by having that zoning determination, should really be announcement, listed in the public, in the legal notice, then the public is aware that that's coming up. And
That's when the clock
so
starts.
that's when the clock would start, when we
Wouldn't
announce.
start, if Mike made a zoning determination, he filled out a form and he put a date on it, that wouldn't start the clock.
That's
It would
correct.
start it here.
Yes.
To the board.
Announcement.
Okay, so it's publicly announced, everybody knows, it's out there, it's in the public, the clock starts,
Yep,
30 days.
right.
We currently had, I thought there was a 45-day, there's something in,
No, we have 20 right now.
we have 20?
Yeah, current.
Okay, it was a 20, then a 30, there were 2 different days. So we would have to change our 20 or something?
No, what the proposal, what NHMA's proposal was to, instead of reading just 30 days, change the language to say whatever the local zoning board's appeal period is. So,
That's not what it says right now. I mean, it says a reasonable time as provided by the rules of the board.
yeah,
That's what it says right now. So if they're basically against that, they're basically taking that whole change away. And I agree with you that 30 days is a kind of accepted time period of a reasonable period to allow somebody to have objections on something. And I would think that you would want to have 30 days unless the board decides otherwise or something like that, or whatever. I mean, the board could basically say, yeah, it's going to be in 5 days.
yeah.
But currently, our ZBA has their own 20-day,
Our ZBA is a 20-day appeal
20
period.
days. So they, if this passed under the current thing, unless you made the change you just made, it would be 30 days.
Right.
And they'd have to change it. If you put in what you just said, it could be tighter,
Yep.
allow us to do it tighter.
Or some ZBAs could have a longer appeal
I,
period.
I think 20 is too restrictive. I think 30 is reasonable.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're, in this, I don't know if I wanted to say caught me by surprise, but if you went to the ZBA for whatever, and the ZBA either approved the variance or special exception or denied it, then you're already kind of on the calendar of ZBA things. So then to have a, say, from the ZBA decision on whether to grant or deny a special exception or variance, you have 20 days. That's probably not so bad because the public is already there, butters are already there.
Right.
So 20 days. But on this one, it hasn't even got to the board yet, and they're
Right.
determining what the right appeal period.
ZBA hasn't even seen
So,
it.
yeah. So it was, that's what the laws read.
You know,
but,
and we're still stressing with this whole issue, and there is a court case in New Hampshire where a zoning determination actually doesn't have any standing relative to a formal court proceeding appeal. So it's an administrative appeal that's involved, and that has to be dealt with at the local level. You know, is this opening up a can of worms where it's going to enter into the realm of a formal appealable situation that can lead to litigation in front of a judge and jury or whatever? You know, it's,
Well,
and there's a case that it says that a zoning determination is not a permit to do anything.
Right.
The only thing that can actually be litigated is a permit that's been issued by an official local body. That's the only thing that's standing. So a site plan approval issued by a planning board can be formally appealed, and there's a process involved with that. How do you litigate a zoning determination that doesn't give anybody
Well,
any rights whatsoever?
if this passes, this would establish something that could be litigated, because there's a law that says you have to have 30 days. So it could be litigated, even though it isn't a zoning determination, because it says you have to do it within 30 days.
I'm just hoping that whoever is putting this forward has actually is looking at judicial cases, case law pertaining to this, because I really don't think zoning determinations actually have litigation appeal as part of the process. You know, it's just nothing to appeal. It hasn't, there's nothing that's been permitted yet that allows for that structure to be built or that use to be implemented. You know, and there is a court case to that effect. It's like, hey, what are you appealing? Zoning determination doesn't give a permit to do anything. It just allows you to apply for a permit. So that's a case.
Yeah, but, I mean, if the zoning official says you need a variance, and you don't think you do, you can appeal that
Appeal that.
administrative.
Right.
So that's all this is.
Yeah, it's an administrative appeal.
Yeah.
But, you know, abutters are not going to be in a situation where they're going to be able to litigate the determination of the local zoning official to a court of law, because it would be thrown out. They can appeal to the ZBA.
Right.
They'll have standing to appeal that decision to the ZBA, and then, you know, and hopefully none of this really has a common practice of being an appeal situation, because if the zoning officer knows what he or she is doing, they're going to make absolutely certain that their interpretation of the zoning ordinance allows you to apply for a special permit, special exception, special permit, or a variance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they're gonna have, they're gonna put enough weight and review of every application before them.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't, I don't remember it ever coming up before.
Because anybody can be adversely impacted by a house being built beside them. But right now, they can appeal that building permit, even when the building permit is issued.
Yeah.
You know, an administrative appeal of a zoning determination, again, it means nothing. You have the right to appeal a building permit for a house being built beside you if you want to do that. Except the reality is, in all likelihood, the use is allowed in the zoning district and only requires a building permit. You know, it's the same for a duplex. In an R2 zone, a duplex zone, usually the building inspector does have the authority to issue that permit. When it goes to a multifamily, that's when most towns require site plan review.
Right.
Or a special permit process, you know, and it has to be allowed in the zoning.
So what is the remedy for, follow what you were saying, if a zoning officer comes up with a determination, it's incorrect, it's clearly incorrect, or whatever, whoever checks into it. Once he files it and 30 days go by, there's no remedy, because he could be wrong, and it just goes forward. This is the only remedy here.
Yeah, but the only remedy is that he's given them the right to apply for a permit.
Right, but it's based upon an error
If it's a permit of which he has the permit granting authority, then there's a 30-day appeal period involved with that permit.
Right, but if nobody catches it in that 30-day, my point is that if he made an error, and it's truly an error, then at that point, it sounds to me like there's no remedy. Because let's say he made an error, and he got it clearly wrong, and it went forward, 30 days go by, it goes forward, and then, somebody puts a plan forward, and it's based upon an error in a zoning determination, we can't stop it, we can't do anything about it.
Yep, no, but.
There's no remedy.
The permit granting authority, whoever that is the building inspector, is it the planning board, zoning board, is it the Board of Selectmen? Some communities do have Board of Selectmen that do issue special permits. So so there's a zoning determination that's in error. Well, all it's in error of is allowing, say, for instance, hypothetically, allowing somebody to apply for a permit that would actually lead to the implementation of the proposed use. And that's appealable. You know,
But-
to me, it just, you're trying to introduce into the process what is now a situation that does not lead to legally litigation. It leads to an administrative appeal to the ZBA. That's all the zoning determination does. If you want to appeal a zoning determination that the building inspector makes, and he made an error, and it's within the time frame specified, you're only going to the ZBA with the appeal.
Yeah, right.
It's dealt with at the local level. Yeah, it's rare. I mean, what we dealt with last spring, that was a rarity more than anything.
Well,
You know, if it wasn't near any residential abutters, that use was out in a different area and didn't abut anybody, there wouldn't be a question.
But in that case, it wasn't an error. He actually made the right zoning determination. And the only agenda that people have is they didn't have a chance to appeal it. They thought that he made the wrong, but he made the right. My question is, if he made the wrong one, and I don't see any remedy now, he's
Yeah, but
almost
they're-
like God. He says that this is what it is, and unless somebody appeals it, it just goes forward.
Yeah, but now, they have the remedy. The remedy for them, the abutters, is to actually appeal something that is appealable under the statutes and under local jurisdiction. They have to appeal the decision of the planning board to Superior Court.
But let's say they appeal, let's say it goes forward and there's no appeal in the 30 days and no, they didn't go to the ZBA, and then it goes to us, and then we approve it. And then they come in and they say they want to litigate it based upon the fact that it was an error, nothing that we did. It's just an error. He just clearly made an error.
Judge would say, you missed.
Can't
you
do
missed the
it?
Deadline. You missed the 30-day appeal period. Too bad.
So,
So is
I
really the issue?
I don't like that, because
is the issue
what's
really-
bothering me is he made an error, and there should be a remedy.
But isn't
think
the
you-
issue
that's
when
your
the
opinion.
clock begins? The clock begins, as far as the public is concerned, when they're notified of something happening. Whether you post it on a website or whatever, now it's documented. People can actually go there and say, oh, someone's building or someone's putting something in our area. The case that happened this spring, it was done by the building inspector, but it wasn't communicated in any way to the public.
Well, there's some dispute on that, that it was in a document that their lawyer should have seen. But you're right, it wasn't communicated to the public, it was in the file.
Right.
So there was some dispute as whether it was there or not. But your point is that it wasn't publicly, this would help that, but I'm still disturbed by the fact that a zoning determination officer can make an error, and it just flies right through if you don't appeal in 30 days. Doesn't seem right to me. There ought to be some way down the road. He made an error, that it ought to be
The
reversible.
only way you're going to do that is that the permit granting authority, this is my opinion, would have to be the zoning determiner. You know, but that opens up another can of worms. How did they get here? Well, they got here because they've decided to apply for this particular use that they want to put in that zoning district. And, you know, at the initial public hearing, you could have a process involved where the planning board decides.
It seems to me what the ZBA ought to be given more powers when they see a clear error in a zoning determination and is brought to their attention, even if the 30 days are over,
The ZBA
they
can
would
do
have a
whatever they
way
want.
to do something about it.
The ZBA is
If-
quasi judicial board.
if we get we, the planning board, gets a determination of zoning that we think is incorrect,
Yeah.
informally, we can go back and to the zoning officer and say,
Right.
gee, we think this is incorrect,
So we
and
have that ability to do that.
to do that informally, yeah.
And hopefully, we would know, somebody on the board would know, oop, that's wrong.
Yeah, so.
Or you would catch it as the
You know-
planning.
You know how, most towns do it
Yeah.
most effectively, okay?
I don't think,
A zoning determination has to be issued to all members of the ZBA.
Yeah, we-
That's
we
the,
don't-
that's the appeal body to
they don't
a
get the
zoning
zoning
determination.
determinations.
No, but that's how a lot of towns do it.
Oh.
So a
That would be
zoning
good.
determination should be issued, every one of them should be issued directly to members of the ZBA. Because that's the appeal body.
Yeah.
It doesn't, but it doesn't work like that.
No.
In New Hampshire. So if
How
by,
does it not
It's
work
not
like
up to
that
the
in New Hampshire?
ZBA
Because
to catch
you
any,
can, a local community can make a decision of who's going to be notified. I know some communities that the Board of Selectmen get notified of
Well,
all zoning determinations, planning boards and ZBA
yeah,
members.
yeah, I mean, certainly you can send ZBA information. I mean, there's no question about that. But unless they have, somebody has submitted to them an appeal, they have no authority to, they get the information and say, geez, I think this is screwed up, but then that's the end of it. They have no authority to initiate an appeal on their own.
Right.
So if the informal method doesn't work, then I believe the planning board also has the authority to appeal that decision to the ZBA
Within 30 days.
within 30 days.
You have to have standing to appeal. So
I-
that's another realm of law. You can't just be an appellant to a determination. You have to have standing. Are you a direct abutter?
That's not what it says in
No,
the
but
House
just
bill.
Just being a public official,
It says right in the House bill that you could be any person aggrieved. That's not standing. Is that standing?
person
Maybe it is
agreed.
standing.
aggrieved.
Agreed.
An aggrieved party has to have standing.
Okay, and
Who-
but it says
who
or,
Legally has standing.
it says or by any officer, department, board, or bureau, so.
Hey, get a lot of legal scholars, hopefully they're reviewing it. I've also talked to plenty of legislators over the years. Hey, do you guys ever listen to your counsels, people that are getting paid to interpret the law and draft these bills for you? And, are they doing all the research necessary, to put the right language in so that you have laws that are constitutional, laws that are within the statutes that are already existing, and within case law?
I would have,
There's a lot of cans of worms you have to
I have more,
open up.
I would have more faith in what the NHMA says, because they deal with the issues all the time, than I do the legislative service people and draft
too.
this language. Now, to be fair to them, they get this stack of 1,200 requests to make bills, and they have to go
Yeah.
through all 1,200 by some date and
Right.
propose language. So, last year, I would, of the bills that we tracked, pertaining to planning commission, pertaining to transportation, land use, and, all the stuff that we're generally interested in, I would say over 50% had amendments, and maybe another 25% had amendments on top of amendments, and floor amendments, and Senate amendments, and committee. I've never seen such a amendment crazy year as last year.
And how many bills passed? Or percentage-wise?
I think it runs 30-40% maybe. It's not spectacular.
And then how many of
I was
those
gonna say it was lower.
got vetoed?
Well,
Gonna be a lot of them
with
this
the
year.
current governor, 57 last year, which is,
57%?
no, 57 got vetoed.
Vetoes.
And the previous highest total was 15. So, and same as expected this year. There'll be a lot of bills proposed, both the House and Senate concur, and it gets vetoed by the governor. But you never know until it happens.
Sounds like a tug of war
Yeah.
of philosophies.
It's, yeah, I think unfortunately, there's some overriding philosophies that people vote on rather than what actually might be good for the,
Good luck to your bill, Tim.
Is it called a 10 more bill?
no, it's called HB 1435.
Tim's bill. Throw a name on it with some sympathy, you have a better shot.
Yeah.
I hope it passes.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I think and like I said, I'm sure we come to an acceptable amendment with the NHMA, and if they then endorse the amendment, pretty good chance it will.
Did Norm or Bob or anybody speak to it as well?
Norm introduced the
He did?
bill, gave a brief update of what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that was fun for half an hour.
I'm sure the building inspectors are totally thrilled by it.
Well, I mean, doesn't really,
Are we adjourned?
except for adding a half dozen words to the legal notice, there's
Get a
no
bill.
extra work by anybody. I mean, the zoning officer doesn't do anything different than he currently does. He sends a letter to the planning board that says, here's what I determined the zoning is permitted or not. So the only difference is that few extra words in the legal notice, and the fact that when it comes around to accepting as complete or something, we announce, we got a letter from the zoning officer that said this is a permitted use. And you have 30 day or whatever, number of days to appeal it. That's all it amounts to. There's
Hopefully it'll be a
The other-
rarity.
the other adage
They'll
is,
pay more attention to before they put pen to hand.
no such thing as a no-brainer in legislative process.
Speaking of the zoning officer, I hear Mike is at an operation or something?
He did, yeah, I think he's on, he'll be out for, 6 to 8 weeks?
Yep.
I think.
And who's filling in for him?
I think Mark said he just contracted with somebody to do that. A person to do the building inspecting and a different part-time person to do the code enforcement.
For six
I think those
weeks?
people should be in place next week maybe, or the week after at the latest.
And do we have any updates on anything? Plaistow Road?
No updates from Jim Davy in the case. I think the last update you got was he had appealed.
Yeah, it was like 5 days or something,
So, yeah.
December.
So we haven't heard back from the federal appeals court whether they accepted his appeal or not. We're thinking they're probably going to throw it out, but
Any update on
I thought they
ProQuip?
said they were already doing a writ of possession.
maybe Samantha, I didn't.
Yeah, that was in the last meeting minutes, that they were already establishing a writ of possession.
Any updates on ProQuip?
Nope, the last update, we got that the judge wanted to do a site walk, which I've never heard of before, but I guess it's their prerogative.
Who's doing a sidewalk?
The judge and the 2 attorneys.
Oh, really? Cool.
So, you don't know. I mean, it seemed like in December, they wanted to get it done in December, and that obviously it didn't happen. So now, I mean, I don't know, I don't think they're going out if there's snow on the ground, but who knows? So my guess is at this point, they're probably going to wait till spring. So it may drag on through the summer.
Yeah.
I have one more question.
Yep,
The CIP, when are we going to be?
yep. I hoping to get that wrapped up this week, so I'd send everybody a copy. If I get the copy out in time, then put it on the early February meeting to
In order
adopt.
for us to accept that or approve it, however you want to word it, do we have to be okay with the whole document to approve it?
What do you mean?
Because right now with recreation, the capital reserve deposit in 2017 the voters didn't approve it. In 2018, it wasn't on the warrant. In 2019, it didn't get approved, and now the Board of Selectmen have taken it off the warrant again.
Yeah,
So I think that's something we need to address.
I'm not sure, but I don't think there was a recommendation from the CIP committee to put it on the warrant either, because we hadn't got all of the information from the rec commission. So I don't think that came forth from the,
Statutorily, I was only going to mention that the CIP document that derives from the CIP committee adopted by the planning board, sent to the Board of Selectmen, it's only an advisory document, has no regulatory authority whatsoever. The only regulatory authority for implementing any capital improvements comes from the Board of Selectmen. They can do whatever they want with it.
yeah. So,
That's statutory.
back to your question, I don't think, well, I mean, it's our document to amend, so we can take the document from the CIP committee and say, I don't think $10,000 is right here, it should be 0 or 20. But I think it's more important to more of the form and format in the general contents of it. I mean, we can adjust dollar figures, but
I don't even know if it's so much the dollar figure as it is maybe the wish list or,
Exactly.
you know, projects that are on there that people aren't agreeing with, that they don't want to pay,
yeah.
you know?
The warrant that we took off was going to fail anyways, because the Budget Committee said, no, absolutely not, and the selectmen voted against it as well. So it was, if it would have been put on there, my guess is people would have looked at that and said no. So I think we had a brief discussion about, there might be a need to survey the Plaistow residents to determine how they perceive recreation delivering services to them, what services that might be. There is a plan, but I'm not sure that plan is in touch with possibly the needs of the town. And so I would suggest, you know, before you go off and come up with a 10-year, here's what we're going to do in 10 years, determine from some type of surveying process what residents actually want and what they'd be willing to pay for.
But what you just said was true before the CIP committee met, so they should have already considered that. It wasn't just this year, it was 3 years in a row, so.
And I don't think that has ever happened.
Yeah, but the job of the CIP, if I could just,
Yeah.
I've done this for years. right? The Board of Selectmen have to request formally that the planning board conduct a CIP. Okay, planning board has no authority to conduct a CIP without direction given, request given by the Board of Selectmen. So you have to take that formal vote every year, if you want it every year or every 3 years, whatever it is. So once the planning board receives that request, then they proceed to form the committee, appoint the committee, and the members and residents, all within the guidelines that are required, then you conduct the CIP. It's not up to the CIP committee members, okay, to put their finger up.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I 100% agree with you, and that was not what I was suggesting. I was suggesting it is the rec department, and probably more importantly, the rec commission, who is responsible for the strategic direction of the rec department, for them to go up and get input from
before they engage and assist in writing the CIP. I had nothing,
Yeah.
you guys are just doing a planning process that's being requested, 100% support that. You're not mind readers, and you should not be telling a department what they should do.
To be perfectly honest with you, I don't understand what value added the planning board adds to the CIP. We get the CIP, what value added do we add?
This is how some towns do it, okay? These department heads, they all have a wish list, okay? Within the CIP documentation, the Board of Selectmen can require the department heads to show up before the Board of Selectmen to go over their particular wish list. And you can bless them to go forward to the CIP or not, okay? Because some things are not financially palatable, they're not going to have a chance. That's what you guys can do, Board of Selectmen, relative to dealing with the capital improvement plan for the town. So when the department heads submit their requests and come before the CIP, they have more of a realistic understanding of the process, more realistic understanding of the financial restraints. Not everybody gets all the toys they want for Christmas.
Correct.
All right, so it's up to the CIP committee, once every department submits their wish list of capital improvements, to rank each one, which is of most importance, and that gets the highest number. And you're voting for capital improvements for that one particular year, with every department coming in with each succeeding year's item that they'd like to implement over the next 6 years.
Right.
But you're really voting as a CIP committee for that wish list of projects that can be implemented that coming fiscal year. And it doesn't always work out that way, because out of the blue, a capital improvement that all of a sudden has all the support out there, whether it's a fire station or police station that wasn't even part of the CIP, but all of a sudden there's a huge amount of support for something like that, and the Board of Selectmen are for it, and you're getting grant monies for it, and, that comes into being, just like that.
Right.
Or a senior center that,
Yep.
May be low on the capital improvement committee's list of implementation projects, but it's politically feasible and, say, financially feasible at the same time. It bubbles up to the top and it's done.
So, yeah, I think the real link with the planning board is the master plan. If you don't have a master plan, you can't have a CIP. So the CIP, kind of the planning board's responsibility is to make sure that the projects, capital projects that are in the master plan are in the CIP. So if the master plan calls for purchasing 6 new fire trucks because 6 are outdated, then the CIP would reflect, here's how here's our plan to finance those 6 trucks over the next 10 years.
Yeah, that's the theory behind it. But in fact, the way it works in this town is that the CIP committee is the one that knows the most about the CIP, does all the work, understands it, and it comes to us, they've already done that work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, we can compare it to the master plan, but I'm not sure exactly how much value that adds. I mean, it is some value, but in this town, it's not the selectmen, it's not the planning board, it's the CIP committee that does the CIP.
But I agree with what John is saying. I think the selectmen should have a much broader, or more inclusive need to get the department heads to come to explain what is their
Yeah.
plan and why does that support services that residents really want.
Right.
And I would highly recommend and invite you to get with Francine and come to one of our boards to talk to us about that, because I don't think, I'm a brand-new selectman, but I don't think that has ever occurred. And I think that there's a role for the selectmen to do to generate that proper need. And if that proper need is generated, hopefully, it doesn't have to wait until it gets to the budget committee, and the budget committee is saying, no, 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 no. We know better. It should be that there's a need for this, and it's been researched and determined what Plaistow residents want.
Ultimately, the real check and balance is that it goes, if it has to go on the warrant.
It has to be voted.
Yeah. And if the voters are happy enough and want it, they'll vote for it.
Correct.
They don't, that's the check and balance.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, sometimes there's a timing difference. The thing about the rec doesn't feed into the CIP until next year, even though it probably should be adjusted this year. It looks kind of funny to have a town report with a CIP that says we're going to do all this rec stuff, and it hasn't been done. It's just inconsistent to look at it. But next year, it should be picked up.
Yeah.
So there's a timing thing.
Yeah, and everything is timing, so it's the most high priority project that needs to be implemented for next fiscal year. That's what the department head is selling to the CIP committee, right? And hopefully for adoption. Followed by the second highest is going to be on that second year. And that's why it's a 6-year project. So all these projects, once implemented, rotate up to the next set. And it's a continual capital improvement. I love the statutes involving this because it makes communities pay attention to what they need and to try to implement what they need to continually improve their community structurally.
Right.
Everything that's allowed to be planned for and paid for, puts form in order to things.
Right.
And it requires people to actually think and participate in the process.
We give the departments the responsibility to control a segment of the town's business or the town's functions and services, but they really often become little fiefdoms that basically say, this is what I want. And it really should come back to, well, what do the residents want?
Everything that makes this form of government work is through deliberation.
Right.
And through the whole check and balance process. Not anybody should be allowed, and they don't, because the system does work, and run out the door with a bag of everything they want.
Right.
And leave everybody, having to pay for it, or all the other departments getting nothing. So it's a great deliberative process that really does work. And anybody paying attention knows that.
We used to present the CIP to both the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee. And we did that pretty religiously up until 2 years ago.
Really?
And then they felt they didn't need to have us do that, so they haven't done it the last 2 years. But that was a way really for the, it's 5 selectmen, 2 of them are on the CIP committee. So, they already obviously had, those 2 obviously had a good understanding, but the other 3, not necessarily so. And particularly if there's been, if you're newly elected, the people. So, it's their choice whether they want it or not, but kind of disappointing because then, during some of the budget things, I knew from little I was listening, they didn't have a clue what the hell was in the CIP or why it was in there. And yet they're making statements like, well, it's not in the CIP or it's not here. Well, it is there. You haven't read the CIP. So you don't necessarily have to agree with the.
Right, but its presence inside of the CIP, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's good for Plaistow to be given that and to pay for it is a completely another thing.
Sure.
So, yes, we definitely want departments to plan. We definitely want them to have a long-term strategic direction that they're going in. But most importantly, that planning, short-term and long-term, has got to be for the benefit of the residents of the town. And we keep on forgetting that. At least that's what my observation has been since March, from what I've seen.
Well, are we going to be voting on the CIP?
We have to approve
We have
it.
to approve it?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I think we've said approved before. It's really adopt.
Adopted? Oh, okay,
Yeah,
sorry, I used the wrong word.
Yeah, adopted. And does the CIP meet before they already
Yeah,
adopted it?
yeah, in the summer
Yeah.
usually, late summer.
So
okay.
sometime in I'll say early September, I think was the last CIP committee meeting. But there was still some, we hadn't gotten an update from REC. There was a couple things we hadn't got updates from. And one of them, fairly important one, Mark had kind of recommended an IT capital reserve fund for all of the computer equipment, networking, and so forth and so forth. he was waiting to get a list from Armand, who's our IT contractor, about what needs to be replaced and updated and how much. So I think I heard he got that just recently and is going to selectmen in a couple of weeks with that list. So we were waiting on a number of things, and we didn't get them all. So it's kind of lingered there, and partly my fault for not pushing it through.
So so we will adopt it in February, March, whatever you,
Yeah, hopefully the February 5th or 6th, whatever the first February
Okay.
date is. And by the second Wednesday in February, for sure.
and when that comes in for the rec, will it show a number for next year in the CIP, even though it was taken out of the warrant? It'll still show it as a plan. So there'll be a disconnect there, which will be picked up next year.
So, yeah, so
Okay.
the way it was.
That's your point, right?
The way it
Well,
was,
it's not so much the money, I think it's the projects in there, myself.
yeah.
Yeah, that are written
So
up.
whatever was in their strategic plan is in a spreadsheet. It will
Yeah,
show that.
They had a number for 2020.
And there was an area for CIP committee recommendations, which, if the CIP committee had recommended deposit in their capital reserve fund, that would be in the recommendation. There
Right.
was no such recommendation, so,
You did recommend the capital reserve, right?
well, that's already established. But we didn't recommend any additional deposit.
Oh, you didn't?
Was,
Okay.
was, was
There
this
was
generated by,
25,000 on it, right?
was this generated by the rec department, or was it generated by the rec commission?
The strategic plan?
Yep.
CIP.
The strategic
It's
plan.
It's
It's-
important, that's an important question, because I'm getting the impression that Bill Coyle is being exposed to a lot of things that he was not exposed to because we are missing a department head.
Yeah.
So my guess is that, and you can correct me, that the department head made a lot of those determinations herself.
Probably so. I mean, it was a rec commission document, though.
Yeah.
It was their plan.
Yeah.
I'm sure they had a lot of input from the rec director, as they should.
Right.
But, yeah, it wouldn't, I mean, it would definitely be, it was a rec commission document. Here's how the commission felt, this is the stuff that they felt we needed going forward. But I do think, because they have, more times than not, failed at town meeting to get the money they requested, that, we should maybe work with when the new director is on board, having them conduct some kind of a
There's another example of a disconnect in the library. The library submitted on our CIP, 50,000 or whatever for 2020. So it goes in the CIP.
Yeah.
CIP reviewed it, everything's fine. Then subsequent to that, the library, we decided to pull it, and the selectmen agreed, the budget committee. So there is no warrant. However, the CIP still has it. So my point is, it'll still be in the CIP, be a disconnect picked up next year,
Yeah.
right? So we don't have to be concerned if we approve a CIP that has a number in there, it's gonna get,
Eventually,
yeah,
hopefully.
it's a moving document.
Right.
Right, yeah, I mean, you'd have to make 65 updates to the CIP
Yeah.
as you went through the budget. So you-
It
so you-
is an
you
advisory
take a snapshot.
document.
Yeah.
And that's all it is.
Long-range planning.
It's delivered to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen do with whatever is in there with what they want to do with it, right? And then certain things make it to the town warrant, and ultimately the people vote. If the people are well-informed and they're in favor of the project, whatever it is, it has a great chance of passing.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it. You have to have as much collaboration as possible, presentation, education helps.
Correct.
A lot of people go in, I don't like this, but they don't know anything about it. were they given the opportunity? You know, was it on TV? Is it on the town's website? You know, good things, word of mouth passes pretty fast.
Yes.
You know, and people will support good things. People will support things that are affordable. They're not going to afford things that are going to increase their taxes exponentially. They're just not going to do that.
Right.
And plenty of great projects, especially in an SB2 town, don't go anywhere but within one's imagination or a group of residents' imagination, because they're unfeasible. You know, and until they become feasible in the minds of the electorate, and enough of them to form a majority necessary for that project to go underway, it's just not gonna happen.
Right.
Because that people ultimately have the say. They have to be sold. And anybody that underestimates their power and, you know, and their intelligence will be sorely disappointed with the results of any election.
Yep.
That's the reality, right? We all have to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a good thing.
I would say, you know, over the last 10, 15 years, most of what we propose gets approved. And I would like to think that we collectively, all the departments and commissions and whatever, do make a good case for it.
That means you're doing a good job.
So, yeah. Certainly, almost every year, something gets voted for that you didn't think had a good chance, things that you thought were
True question.
a no-brainer, that obviously would get passed, fail.
Right.
And so you try them again the following year and
Well, you think that's
pass.
A strong economy
what
helps.
people want.
Well,
That's practical, but they don't.
Tough times make it
Now,
tough.
this year, with the big jump in assessment and tax bills, not quite as optimistic this year about a lot of things passing. But still, if you make the case that, you know, yes, you know, everyone's taxes went up a lot, but by not spending money to add a few dollars to the capital reserves and to keep equipment updated, come down 4 or 5 years down the road, all these things are gonna break, and then you're gonna be all of a sudden short of a snowplow, and streets not gonna get plowed on. It's like, you know, as soon as you would like to have them, or, so there are consequences for not doing things, and,
Or not having enough salt.
well,
Not to bring up a salty subject.
That is quite, in our town, so, yeah.
I
Okay.
greatly appreciate being here. I learned an awful lot just this evening, and I'm also thank you for accepting my comments
well, you know,
as a newbie coming in here, and I hope to learn a lot more about the CIP and the master plan as things go on.
Yep.
There's just so many balls that you can juggle.
You're
Oh, yeah.
welcome back whenever you want to.
yeah, it's open invitation.
We're always looking for audience members.
Francine's still gonna be out?
For the most part, if somebody's here, they can participate. I mean,
Yeah.
She's on
if
vacation.
there's
You'll
100
just-
people out here,
You'll just have to get Francine not to come a few times.
Yeah, right.
Good luck.
I think we've appreciated your company too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah. Okay, is there any other business? Anyone?
Anything else?
No,
That
All
was
right,
it
we
for
will
me.
I move we
adjourn
adjourn.
at 8:10.
Yeah.